good old summertime, in the good old summertime, strolling down the shady lane with your dreaming mind. You hold her hand and she'll hold yours. That's a very good sign that she's your Tootsie Woodin'. The good old summer.
Gentlemen, I take great pleasure in introducing the speaker of the evening, Mr. Lem Putt, the specialist.
Mr. President and gentlemen, I've been asked to say a few words to you folks regarding my work as a specialist. I am a carpenter by trade. I can build a house, barn, chicken coop, birdhouse, anything along that line. But I have noticed that the man that specializes is the most successful. So I have specialized in just building privies. And I am known as the champion privy builder of Champaign County. Now, the average privy that I build is just a plain, old-fashioned, 3-hole, 8-family privy. The largest I build up to date was the Union Farm. Now, they employ, about 25 help there, and I put up for them the finest piece of construction work in the whole state, an 8-holer. I always give 6 months privy service. About 2 weeks after I finished that 8-holer, Union Farm, the foreman called me up. They'd like to have me come right out. They was having privy trouble. So I got my service wagon and went right out. It was right in the middle of haying time, the busiest part of the season, and them there hired help was a-going in that privy and arresting anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. Well, I said, you certainly have got yourself privy trouble. But I'll fix it. So I went in. I examined the structure. Everything seemed to be on the up and up. I thought it might be the catalog. It wasn't even from a recognized house. You know at once, quick as a flash. As I see the matter, I made them holes too darn comfortable. But I says, I'll fix it. So I just takes my saw and I cuts them holes square with hard edges. And I killed that resting. That's what comes of being a specialist, gentlemen. I just finished a mighty nice privy for Frank Wright. Now, Frank, he's been in line for a privy for some time, but he never want to close a contract. So he calls me up the other morning, said he'd like to have me come out and do some work. I says, privy building or paper hanging? He says, privy building. You see, I paper hang on the side when privy building is dull, but gentlemen, my heart is just in privy building. Well, I went over to his place. Always like to get started early in the morning, and they was at breakfast. They had a lot of city folks, company, and the way his porch is all screened in there, screen-like, you know, with a door. And I could see through the screen door Frank sitting there at the head of the table. So I just calls in, and I says, "Hey, Frank, where do you want that privy put?" Didn't want to embarrass him for all his company, so he excused himself, and he comes out. He steps off a place, and he says, "Dig in there." So I dug in. Now, gentlemen, I want to tell you something about digging a hole for a privy. Dig her deep and dig her wide. It's a mighty sight worse to have a big privy over a little hole than a little privy over a big hole. And I'll tell you why. When you got her dug deep, she's dug. And you ain't got that disconcerting thought of stealing over you, that sooner or later you'll have to dig again. Well, I got the hole dug, sides all up. I was standing it about up to there. Frank comes out, scratches his head like, looks down at me. He says, "Lem." I looked up at him. I said, "What?" He says, "Get on out of the hole. I want to talk to you." So he gets out, and he says, "I've been thinking. Now, the way that privy would sit, it's quite a distance from the house. And there's times here in the winter when we bundle Grandpap up and we start him out towards that privy. It's quite a jaunt for the old gentleman. It's about the only recreation he gets." Well, I said, "So, it's your privy. I'm here to build 'em. I ain't here to pick the spots." So I fill that hole in and steps off another place. So it sits right back there in his orchard, kind of on a knoll-like. Why, it was a beautiful spot. And I looked him right square in the eye, and I says, "Frank, you scamp, you have picked yourself a spot for a privy. You're a privy spot picker." Oh, I always believe, gentlemen, in giving credit. Well, now another thing about it. It was on a direct line to the house, and close to the woodpile. You should always have your woodpile close to your privy, or your privy close to your woodpile, and I'll tell you why. Here's the way it works out. You take a woman. You start her out towards the privy. On the way back, she will gather 5 sticks of wood. Go in the house, deposit them in the box. The average woman will make 5 trips to the privy during the day. Now, there is 25 sticks of wood in your wood box. You're in no trouble. Now, you take a skittish woman, or a sort of flighty, or a new hired girl. She starts out towards the privy. She sees some men folks out there. She won't go out. No. You go right directly to the wood pile and come back in the house, put it in the wood box, and then watch your chance. And I've known new hired girls to make at least 10 trips to the privy before she went in, regardless. Now, it says, "Frank, What kind of a roof do you want? A lean-to or a pitch? A pitch costs a little more money, but a lean-to is more practical. Of course, it ain't as pretty, but I have put lean-tos up for some of our very best families. And another thing, a lean-to has 2 less corners for wasps to build their nests in. And I want to tell you, there ain't anything more annoying on a hot August afternoon than to be sitting in there with a lot of wasps buzzing around when you're trying to do a little reading, pondering, or thinking. Now about our furnishing. I says I can put on a nail for the Sears and Roebuck catalog or box for collars. Now I'd put them both in. Won't cost a cent more and sort of keeps peace in the family. Now you take your grandpap, for instance. He's of the old school and naturally would prefer the box. And I want to tell you, you cannot teach old dogs new tricks. The question come up the other day, run into a hot argument. The question was this: what is the life, or how long will a Sears and Roebuck catalog last in just a plain old-fashioned 3-hole 8-family privy? What is the life? That's the question. We checked up on all the 8-family privies in the state and we found out this. You take your catalog, place it in your privy in January when you get your new one. January, February, March, April, May, where you should be into the harness section in May, even running. Of course, you have city folks, you can't tell a thing about it. Now as to a latch. I says I can put on any of a half dozen homemade latches, but they ain't positive in action. So I always suggest the Sears and Roebuck's hook and eye special. Costs a little money, but gentlemen, never be cheap about your latch. Because I have found out in my 32 years of building privies, there ain't anything that'll rack a man's nerves like to set him in a privy without a good, strong, substantial latch. Now for the designs that I cut in the door for ventilation. I cut just a standard moon, star, and diamond. I always say to folks, never take any snap judgment on your design, because I tell you, you can get mighty tired sitting there day after day looking at a design that ain't to your liking. I always advise half moon, mighty pretty privy door. Of course, I do cut double hearts for young married couples, or bunches of grapes for the rich. But that comes up under the head of novelties and runs into money, so I very seldom speak about that. Now, as to the wood that's used in building the privy, I always use clean timber with no knot holes. You take a knot hole, 9 times out of 10 it'll come in the door. If it don't fall out, it'll get pushed out, and it always comes too high to sit there and look out, and just high enough for some snooper to come sneaking around, peeping in. There you are, catched. Now for the door, the way it should swing. I'll show you. I always make my doors so that they swing open and in. This is the way it works out. You take a door, open it about 45 degrees, so the sun can beat in on you, and you got your foot against it. Hear anybody come? Shut it that way. Now, if that door's hung so it opens out, you can't get up off that seat, which way around there, shut the door, now can you? Now as to a paint job. Never paint your privy a solid color. Hard to see at night. I always suggest red with white trimming, or white with red trimming. There's your privy, pretty, and you can spot her at night. Why, one of the worst tragedies that ever happened in our country happened all on account of a red privy. Elmer Clark had been in line for a privy for some time, but he thought my price was too high. So his boys decided to build the privy, and I knowed they was going to have trouble. I tell you, it ain't any job for an amateur. Now, I always anchor my privy. I run a 4x4 from the top of the roof, 5 foot down in the ground. Halloween night comes along. They may be able to pull the privy out, but they'll never upset her. They forgot to anchor it, and they painted it red. Two vital mistakes. Halloween night come along, darker than pitch. Grandpappy Clark, 102 of his a day, was out in the privy. The boys from the city was out doing a little upsetting. So they upsets the privy with old man Clark in it. His boys in the house. They heard the noise and they come out. They couldn't see that privy. Painted red. They went down with the chicken house. Thought the noise was down there. Then they heard the dog barking. The old man called him. He says, "That sounds like Grandpappy's voice. So we're towards the privy." So they started on the run over there. By that time, the old man had gotten confused, and he started to crawl out through the hole, calling all the time. But just as the boys got there, the old man lost his hold and fell. After that, they didn't go near him, just called to him. And they tell me, gentlemen, that he has been practically ostracized from society ever since. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to forget you're here, to let your minds wander back to time that you were boys. There you sit, in that privy. Door open about 45 degrees. Misty sun a beating in on you. It's early in the morning, the fog is just raising. Then their morning glories are growing up over that privy. Hollyhocks all in bloom, bees buzzing around, birds chirping up overhead. And there you sit, looking at that catalog, wishing you had everything in it. And after all, gentlemen, remember, greatness is to take the common things of life and live truly among them.